Hey guys, there's this movie about a guy in 12 who's trying to level up his stats and move up with the help of a trusty mentor who he knows he can rely on. It's called Preparation Time, and it's pretty lit. I know I made that post asking you what you wanted to watch, and only like 2 of you said this, but I have a feeling more of you didn't participate and rather me go over this than some of the suggestions that were actually leading. Also, I've been wanting to go over this movie for some time now, so I just want to get it out there now. I only saw it like a couple days ago, but it's been on my mind ever since, so I knew I had to let niggas know about this incredible tale of teamwork. So the movie starts with the main character named Jack getting ready to become 12.5, while his wife and new fetus are there in the background to give him moral support. He's a little nervous though, because he has to meet up with the higher up, and he knows that if he looks lame in front of him, then he's cut. Then his wife tells him to stop moaning, because it'll all be fine, so I guess that's the end of that. After this, Jack goes to a diner, where he sits down with some guy wearing dark colors. Even though he looks like a threat, it turns out he's the higher up, and his name is Alfonso, and he's trying to see if Jack is really about it. While Alfonso is reading the paper, Jack keeps bugging him by irrelevant nonsense, so Alfonso makes him entertain him, which he fails at, but it's okay, because Alfonso is a forgiving man. Then they get into the whip and go around, while Alfonso teaches him what he's about. While they're driving, Alfonso starts talking a little wild about Jack's family, and he gets in his feelings about it, so Alfonso tells him to hide his weaknesses, because they could get him caught up in the future. Then they pull up to the cut, where one of Alfonso's professional snitches is making some quick sales in the white to his customers. Then he ends up selling to some suburbanites, so Jack and Alfredo get on their ass and bully them into giving up their resources. After this W, Alfonso tries to get Jack to go off a pack, but Jack refuses, because you know, he's 12. Then Alfonso ups a pull on him and tells him to vacate the whip, he's gonna be a pussy all day. So Jack gets off his high horse and takes a hit, but nice seeing things, so that's an L. It turns out Alfonso was a professional troll, and he gave Jack grass that was laced with dust so that he can understand what it's like to not be in control, even though there's not really any use for this at all. Then they go to some guy's crib, who turns out to be one of Alfonso's allies, and he also actually knows about Jack because he was a high school football player, and the ally actually cares about nonsense like that for some reason. Then the ally tells Jack some story about a snail or something, whatever, it means nothing. But as they're leaving, the ally tells Alfonso that he's planning on just chilling in the crib for the day before he leaves the country to retire. While the main characters are driving, Jack is squeaking off that pack he took earlier, so Alfonso tells him to chill out, but then Jack sees a girl about to get violated by some bums, so he hops up the whip and starts giving the hand to the weirdo. Even though he almost gets taken out, eventually Jack is able to beat them into submission until Alfonso finally gets there and tells the girl to go home. Then one of the bums starts talking tough, and Alfonso picks the other one's pockets, and he goes back to the first stop, so treating him like a bitch, and for some reason, Jack looks a little shaken up by it. As soon as Alfonso leaves, the bum who was staying quiet, all of a sudden has the courage to start talking like he's about it, and at this point, I would have considered what Alfonso started. Then while the characters are driving, Jack is in his feelings because the 2 bums that are on the street aren't in a cell, so Alfonso tells them that they just got done dirty and are about to be put on a trip by the girl's people, so he doesn't really see the problem. But Jack starts to question Alfonso's record, so Alfonso has to tell him about his credentials. But after that's all been sorted out, Alfonso lets Jack know that he was correct in his judgment to use brutal force against criminals, and that you have to be a lion to defend the zebras. Then they both start making dog noises or something. Then they go to some place on the strip where niggas are conducting drug deals because they feel they need to put another black man behind bars. Jack tries to buy from Snoop Dogg, and he's in a wheelchair for some reason, but he refuses to sell to him because he knows that Jack is 12 and does a dash on him, so he and Alfonso have to get in his ass. He ends up going inside some shop where the owner is tweaking over intruders entering, but eventually 12 has Snoop cornered, but he doesn't really have any white on him, so it's hard to build a case. To fix this problem, Alfonso puts something down his throat, and not in that way, so don't take it there, you weirdos. He ends up throwing up some contraband, so they make him give up his connects. He still isn't going though, so Alfonso starts leaving some shells on the ground, so he knows when the rest of 12 gets there, he'll be doing some football numbers. So Snoop tells them who gave him the stuff, and the main characters go on about their day. While they're driving, Alfonso gets a call from his Inside Connect to find out where the guy who supplied the contraband stays. Then Alfonso tells Jack they're going to set the crib with a fake warrant because they're 12 and they can do whatever they want. So Jack and Alfonso break inside the crib, and Alfonso conducts a search while Jack stays back and guards the civilians. But then the woman over there starts running her mouth at Jack while Alfonso finesses them. Then when they leave the crib, she finds out she just got scammed just to get the neighborhood guys to put holes in them. So Alfonso blasts back a little and they just fuck off out of the neighborhood. On the drive back, Jack is whining because Alfonso just robbed a family and they both might get processed, so Alfonso tells him once again to chill out. Then they go to the hood, and I guess Alfonso's their overlord or something because they all have to stand still and alert each other when he rolls through. He has some nice conversation with a young man as he enters a part of the community, but then they talk shit about each other behind their backs, so now we know what's really going on. So Alfonso goes to one of his fleshlight's cribs, and Jack stays on the couch and sees one of his kids while Alfonso conducts business. Then Alfonso tells Jack it's time to go because I guess he just finessed them too. Then Jack and Alfonso go to meet up with 3 veteran 12 guys who are above Alfonso. One of them tells a story about how some guy he tried to put away, pretended to be Offwood, so he got away with it. Then they talk about how Alfonso messed up with the Soviets or something. It looks like Alfonso was in danger, so the three major tell him not to get caught up. So Alfonso assembles a team to get an arrest warrant and conduct a raid, and they all meet up with him and Jack, where they discuss their plans to do business. Well, most of them are whatever. Dr. Dre is particularly in his feelings over the new guy being part of the mission, so I guess he's an op. Then they all invade the crib of that guy from earlier, but he doesn't seem particularly bothered, because he thinks Alfonso is still on his side. But then Alfonso comes through and explains to the guy that his time has come. So Alfonso has two of his guys go through the Allies' floor, and they find a lot of funds over there, so you know they're feeling themselves. Then they also taking a little piece for themselves, but Jack isn't participating, so the rest of the guys continue on. After this, they all go back to meet up with the ally they just finessed, and Alfonso tells Jack to blast him. At this point, Jack thinks this is all a joke, so he pretends to fire. So Alfonso actually uses the stick and sends his ally to a new dimension, so now Jack knows this is something else. To make it look more realistic, one of Alfonso's minions stands in the door, while Alfonso uses the ally's hands to put holes in him. So they all decide to come up with a story to justify their crimes, but Jack isn't going. So Alfonso has to tell him the consequences of going against him. But then Jack takes Alfonso's pole and puts him on his back, while all the other guys point their sticks at him. So Alfonso has to explain to Jack that if he stays on board, he can move up in life, and also that when he gets bucked by 12, they'll see that he's been off the dust, because Alfonso has been planning all this for a minute now, but Dr. Dre is still tweaking in the background, so Alfonso has to tell him to calm down. Then Jack lets up on Alfonso and gives the beats to Dre and goes out. So after Alfonso and Jack are in the whip, Jack is feeling some type of way that Alfonso just put his own ally in the news. So Alfonso has to let Jack know that he wasn't his nigga and it was all for the best anyway, but Jack still isn't going, and he tells him he's not trying to move up if it means being a scumbag. So Alfonso tells him that doing stuff like this is just part of the job and that he'll need to move up if he wants to change things. After Jack starts to calm down, Alfonso takes him on another mission to one of his snitches' cribs to leave off some thank you gifts. When they get there, they go in a room with 3 gang members, and Alfonso tells Jack to just stay there while he goes to do something else. Then the gang members try to get Jack to play cards with them, but he isn't trying to do all that, so they tell him to just participate because it's not like Alfonso's coming back anytime soon. So Jack sits down and starts playing cards, but one of them starts asking to see his strap, and it looks like Jack forgot where he was because he ends up giving his strap to him, but at least he makes it useless before doing so. After some wasted time, he gets it back, but he tries to piss off. He lets them know that Alfonso did the dash on him, and they make him stay there. So the leader of the gang members explains to Jack that Alfonso was tweaking one night. I ended up putting a Russian in the dirt, but it turns out this Russian is actually someone important, so now the Federation is on his ass if he doesn't give them a lot of funds by midnight, which is what all these finessing missions have been about. Then the gang members are asking him if he's ever gotten his butthole pillaged before, so he smacks the leader and tries to make a run for it, so they gun in his ass and prepare to turn him to a pack in the bathtub. But before that, one of them checks his pockets and finds the ID of that girl that was about to get violated earlier, and it turns out it's the leader's cousin, so he starts questioning Jack, so he explains what happened, but just to be really sure, he calls up his cousin and she confirms it. So the leader lets Jack live and go on about his day. So Jack goes to the hood from earlier, and they let him pass because they know he isn't going. Then he sees Alfonso sitting in the window, and he has him open the door for him. When he gets in, he tells Alfonso to put the funds in the shop in a bag, and at first he cooperates, then he starts dumping shells, and ends up engaging in Giotto with Jack in the crib, and he basically says that he's the reason that Snoop is in a wheelchair from earlier. Then Alfonso even risks his son's life, so you know he's possessed. Eventually, they make it outside, while Alfonso shots Jack up, tries to dash in his whip, but Jack falls through and ends up wrecking his whip. So Jack and Alfonso have a standoff, but Jack shoots him in the ass, and the hood draws up Alfonso from doing anything, while Jack escapes with a green. So you know Alfonso is in his feelings, and goes all the niggas to pussy out, because he threatens to put them under a cell. Later on, Alfonso's trying to go to the airport, but the Eastern Europeans run up on him, and put him on the news, which plays while the movie ends, with Jack going back to his crib. Overall, this movie was all kinds of heat. You really should have seen it before watching this video, but don't worry, just like the last video, I too knew too much going in. Like I already knew Alfonso was gonna get done dirty by Jack, but at least this time, I didn't know the full extent of his wickedness. Let me know what other movies I should go over. And the moral of the story is that 12 is full of so many ops that if you're really doing it to save people and get public approval for your work, you should consider a career in firefighting instead. Okay guys, make sure that when you subscribe you hit the notification button, because that lets you know whenever I make a new video, and as always, thanks for watching.